Good morning, everyone. It's Mr. Mann here, and welcome to my 8th assembly. Can't believe how time has gone. This time I'm going back to a series, or the start of a series of assemblies that I did on the book You Are Awesome. And in this today's assembly, I'm focusing on practice makes awesome. Okay, and to start off with, just to give you some ideas about how awesome we are as humans, back in 1900, the winner of the men's 100 metres took the title in just over 11 seconds. Today, thanks to the power of practice, that time is regularly beaten by the under-15s at the National School Championships. And way back in the 13th century, an English scholar called Roger Bacon argued that it was impossible to master maths in less than 40 years. Today we consider that kind of calculations he was talking about to be basic stuff we learn at school. So we humans are better than ever, all thanks to our brain's neuroplasticity. But you still have to practice if you want to be the best you can be. And as it turns out, you're probably awesome at lots of things already. Okay, so we've got to do a bit of a reading test now. Now, no groans out there. Growth mindsets love a test. They're great practice. So over to you. So how did you get on? I'm kind of hoping that most of you were able to work this out, even though it looked at first like a load of gobbledygook, utter meaningless. And that's because you've developed a highly complex skill. You've developed patterns of recognition with the English language. It's top-notch, your skill in this now, and that's why you're able to do it. Now imagine a tiny baby. Do you think it would see any difference between these letters? Probably not at all, not a chance, because none of us arrive in the world able to recognise the alphabet. And it would look total nonsense to a newborn baby. But without realising it, you've probably spent hundreds of hours practising reading. It's a hugely complex skill, and I suspect you've never given it much thought. But doesn't it make you think, if you can master this reading business, with practice, what could you achieve? So here are some really complex things that you practice loads without really noticing it. Recognising people we know is a super tricky thing to do. Think about it, almost everyone has the exact same features, 2 eyes, 2 ears and a nose, but tiny differences in appearance become really obvious when you spend a lot of time looking at people. With all the practice we've had, we've unconsciously become really good at facial recognition. But imagine you're trying to pick out a particular rat from a line of 40 rats. Not a chance. You'd pick the same rat out twice, right? They all look the same, ugly things with their hairy tails and pointy noses. But put 40 kids in a row and you'll pick out your best friend every single time. Let's face it, it'd be friendship ending if you didn't. But then think about rock, paper, scissors. It's a really complex thought process for our brains because of the mental backflips we do when trying to anticipate one of our opponent's next moves. The more you play it, the more your brain becomes fine-tuned to the movements of the other person. You know, like the wild hand move that your mum makes when she's decided to go to scissors. And then, if you can convince someone to go to best of 3, you actually start weighing up probabilities in your head. Is your dad really going to go rock 3 straight times in a row? So who says you can't do maths? So here's a little task for you to have a go at. Make a list of all the things that you have practiced and become awesome at without realising that it was what you've been doing. There's 6 things there. How many can you think of? But now I want you to consider practice. Not all practice, I should say, is useful at growing your brain and creating these neural connections. There are different types of practice, and some of these are much more effective than others. Yes, I know this is a bit of a blow. How on earth are we supposed to know what to focus on? Time is precious. We don't want to be wasting it on time that is totally pointless. So let me give you an example of this. Think about practice where it's really screwing up your face, gritting your teeth, and it makes you feel good about yourself afterwards because you know you've actually achieved something. Because no one gets good at stuff by practicing the things they can already do. Can you walk? The answer is probably yes. Now that you can do it easily, do you get any better the more you practice walking? Can you see where I'm going with this? It's all too easy to revise for an exam lying on the sofa, one eye on social media and one eye on that page of French words you're supposed to be learning. That isn't hard practice. Getting up, putting your French words away and reciting them several times to your gran, that would be hard practice. You'd make some mistakes, but guess what? You'd also be curating neural pathways in your French vocab learning and would be more likely to remember those words next time. Awesome people get good at stuff by doing the type of practice that challenges them. It's a secret to their success. But we're not just talking about people who have become world famous in their chosen field. Here's how to practice effectively. For example, sport. Practice with people that are better than you. And there is always someone that's better than you, let's face it. Practice the hard shots, the tricky passes. Use your other foot, for example, in football. If you need to do a presentation to your class, recite the presentation in the mirror. Then say it to your cat and then again to your sister or brother or somebody else. It might be daunting. They might laugh at you, but it will make it easy when you have to stand up in front of a class. In maths, go on, do the question you find difficult, not the ones you can already do. And when you get stuck, don't be afraid to ask. Or if you're learning a language, speak it, don't be shy. Speak it publicly to your friends or teachers who can give you feedback and tell you where you're making mistakes. And if you're revising for exams, don't sit there looking blankly at your revision notes, convincing yourself that the stuff is going in. Do questions from previous test papers and time yourself to get used to words in test conditions. Hard practice makes good practice. Now, for this next exercise, you need to go and find yourself a piece of paper and a pen. Press pause and then come back when you're ready. So it's time to put the theory into practice. And I'm going to read you out some instructions now to learn how to create this Arabic letter. Okay, are you ready? Pen, paper, here we go. Start at the top left-hand side. Draw a short horizontal line, then a curve similar to a capital C. At the top of the letter C shape, draw a small L shape. Add 3 dots in a group in the middle of the C shape. Got that? Okay. Now, I want you to repeat the exercise, but this time I want you to follow the instructions yourself and read them to yourself as you're drawing the letter. Okay, off you go. So we now move on to the automatic stage, and this time I just want you to write the letter or draw the letter like you practiced the first 2 times. You should find this easy. You shouldn't need the instructions at all, because practice makes awesomeness. Have a go and see if you can do it. So how did you get on? Are you now an expert writer in creating that letter, that Arabic letter? And as it says on this side, the reality is, with a growth mindset, anything is possible. A few minutes ago, you would never have been able to write that letter. Now you can. But the thing is, practice can be really hard, particularly if you're doing it well. So what tips would you give someone for practicing hard? Well, the picture here is of an athlete, Simone Biles. And she is an American gymnast who's dedicated her life to training and practicing from an early age. She became interested in the sport at the age of 6 and started working with her first trainer at the age of 8. And by the time she was 18, Simone had won so many medals that when she travelled to the Rio Olympics in 2016, everyone expected her to win gold. And you know what? She did. 4 of them. So these words about resilience and challenge and focus have never been more truly reflected in how Simone Biles went about things to become the very best she can be. It took hours and hours and hours and hours of practice. Many, many times she failed. But through that failure and what she learned and the resilience she showed and the challenge that made it, she was able to focus all her efforts to make sure, because she wanted to be the best she could be. And that resulted in gold medals. And you can't ask more than that, really. So in this coming week, it's great we're going to be welcoming Year 10 back. But for the rest of you who haven't been able to get them back into school yet, just think about one thing that you might focus on this week that you want to get better at. It might be, as it says here, something specific in a subject, like division in maths, for example, or something outside of school. The example here is obviously backhand in squash. You're not going to be able to get to a squash court right now, but what could that one thing be? What will you do? When will you do it? And how will you do it? And what effect did this practicing hard have on you? The sense of achievement when you eventually get it right, I think will be fantastic. Have a go and see how you get on. So that's the end of this week's assembly, and I hope you found it interesting. I hope also that the last few weeks where your tutors and progress leaders have been giving you a ring to see how you are has also given you the lift, and you've been able to talk to them about any challenges that you face right now and how we can try and help you. Good news is it looks like we're all going to be back in September, or so the government announced on Friday, and that will be fantastic, and it can't come soon enough, I'm sure. But in the meantime, keep going with your work. I know it's hard at times, but keep trying your best, taking on these challenges even when it's difficult, because what you'll get from it and what you'll learn from it will last with you for a very long time indeed. Stay safe, and I'll speak to you very soon. Bye-bye now.